people with visible disabilities or other features that might prompt a young child to stare or point. How do you prefer that parents handle their children's innocent public curiosity and you? Not me, but my uncle lost his hand in an industrial accident. When he caught kids looking, he would ask if they wanted to know how he lost it. He would then say how he was an alligator trainer for 5 years and that the only thing he learned after that time is, you can't train alligator. I have albinism, and am a US born Mex-American. Of course, I don't look Mexican. I've had kids ask why my eyes move, or why my skin, hair or eyes look the way they look. I don't mind it. Sometimes I tell them my mom was painting the house and I got in the way, but that's more a joke for the parents. When kids ask why my eyes move, I often just explain it straight. I'm never mean, but I don't really sugarcoat it, which often results in the child asking, being a bit sad when I explain I can't see well and such. One time I had a mom with a son who has albinism approach me and ask me to talk to her son. He was her first child and he had albinism. Lem say from first hand, God, I felt for this lady lol. So I told her son that life would be difficult for him because people will often tell him other have it worse because they are missing a limb or for any other trait they wanna compare the boy to. I told him life will challenge him and that he'll have to read twice as long to read the same amount. I told him he will have to depend heavily on technology to succeed. I then asked him if he could read something of the menu that was towards the ceiling some feet behind the counter of the fast food place we were at. The boy and his mom looked at me sadly. I pulled out my iPhone and opened a third-party magnifier app and zoomed in on the menu. I asked the boy if he could read it. Now, I let him hold my phone and he looked at the whole menu. He then told his mom what he wanted for the first time, instead of waiting for her to help him. I think it's important to let kids ask. So albinism affects the eyes. I did not know that. Also, what a nice thing you did. I rather kids ask all the questions they have. I've had kids ask me some great questions. Adults on the other hand just always ask how I use the bathroom. Trust me, it's the least interesting part of life in a wheelchair. My ex-husband was as an amputee. Lots and lots of kids will point, stare and exclaim, oh wow, he's got a robot leg. Ex really didn't mind and we would giggle about how uncomfortable the parents got. That was the hilarious part, the adults looking embarrassed. Like no crap, kids will say whatever's in their head. We get that, no need to be embarrassed, just say oh yeah he does, that's pretty amazing. Let them ask questions, respectfully, and then when you go home at night perhaps have a conversation about appropriate comments to make about people. It's a really good way to teach your kids about social cues. I've got a couple of large scars on my neck, so when kids start to point and or stare I just tell them this is why you should listen to your parents. The parents usually play along. Plain and simple, don't be a dong about it. Acknowledge me as a person. I had an incident a number of years ago where a kid decided to stare at me as he walked by my home, and the father decided to talk to his son about me as if I wasn't there. When I agreed with something the father said, both parents gave me withering gazes, as though I was supposed to act like an animal in a zoo, rather than a human being who could hear their commentary about me. I hate people like those. I have a progressive neurological disease, young onset Parkinson's disease, that requires me to walk with a cane, as well as speaking with a slight impediment. Although my condition has improved somewhat with medication, I don't mind if children ask what's wrong with me, and I give them a simplified explanation of my disease. I do mind when they try to grab my cane away from me, though. I could get hurt badly if I fall. Don't let your children do that. You need a cane sword. When the little shots try to take it from you, you let them unsheath it and scream kendo way of life. B. When my son was in a wheelchair recovering from a knee reconstruction surgery, children would stare and such. He would always smile and wave to them. He would encourage them to ask their questions and he would explain about his car accident in kid-friendly words. Bonus: he has it B and this impairs his speech at times. The kids would then learn about brain injuries. The parents always looked visibly relieved that he was not offended by the kids. My friend is a little person. She used to volunteer at an elementary school, so she got lots of questions. Her favorite was after she told the kids about her trip to Disneyland, when a little boy put 2 and 2 together and had a light bulb moment, and asked, "Are you one of Snow White's 7 dwarfs?" Some kids don't know any better. Lame excuse, I know, but that crap is funny. Personally, my philosophy is if they get to ask as a kid they'll learn to be respectful as an adult. The intent with which a kid points at me when I use crutches or a wheelchair is so vastly different than how an adult might stare, so it doesn't bother me. It's better to let them ask questions now than to grow up to be people who are uncomfortable trying to interact with someone different from themselves. My wife has a vision impairment called Stargardt's. She's legally blind, but does have some vision. Because her peripheral vision is better than her forward vision, her eye compensated by going to the side. When little kids ask, she encourages them to ask questions. She sees it as an opportunity for the kid to learn something. She encourages the same in the parents. My uncle has this. When he talks to you, he looks at you from his peripheral. He also will use the viewfinder of a video camera to zoom in on things, so we have lots of family videos simply cause Uncle D needed to see. I have Tourette's and my tics usually involve jerking in my hands and neck as well as the occasional grunt, so I can be a big distraction to those around me. Personally, I've gotten used to the staring by children and adults alike, so I usually don't even notice it until my girlfriend points it out to me. However, I love it when come up to me and ask me about it, because then I explain to people and they potentially won't bother another person. I prefer it when children ask, because they ask things like, "Why are you doing that?" or "What is that thing you're doing?" because it comes out of general curiosity, while adults typically ask, "What's wrong with you?" or "Are you okay?" which feels like they're insinuating that I'm not normal. Interesting that kids ask different questions. I wonder when that change happens and why. Vision impaired and use a white cane. For volunteer work, I visit primary schools with a guide dog to teach them about what vision impairment feels like and what guide dogs do. I've had lots of eye surgeries, so always get questioned when wearing an eye patch in public. Always answered with, "This is why you don't run with scissors." So totally happy to stop and talk to any kid if they point me out in public. It's the old people who question me because I'm young that really pisses me off. I have moderate cerebral palsy and use orthotics and sometimes a cane if need be. I don't really care if kids ask me questions because almost none of them are mean. A lot of kids ask me if I'm hurting all the time, and I tell them I do hurt, but I'm used to it. One little girl asked her mom if she could hug me to make me feel not so bad. It's all worth it though for the little girl I met at the grocery store a year ago though. I heard "Mommy, look at that lady's legs," which made me tense because normally conversations that start like that don't go very well. She's like me, "Mommy." I turned around to see a mom holding her 4-ish-year-old and waved hi. Little girl was wearing braces just like mine. So I asked mom if little girl would like to see my brace and if I could talk to her. A girl thought my surgery battle scars were the coolest. That's so sweet. I'm glad that you're able to help and inspire kids. I'll turn it around for you. I have daughter with a disability who has a penchant for touching fat ladies' bellies and saying, "Mommy, look, a baby." Thankfully everyone involved so far has taken it in good humor, but we wait for that fateful day. I'm bald and I wish some parents would avoid telling their kids, "Look, that guy's head shines like the moon." I have a stick, or two, or crutches, depending on how things are going, and a noticeable slant limp as I can't stand up straight for long. I also have multicolored hair, often green or blue. It's 50/50 which bit the kids will stare at and ask questions about. The shy hide behind mum and whisper kids are always puzzled about my hair, not my wonkiness. I get way more rude questions about the stick from adults, many of whom should know better, because they think I'm too young to be disabled. Assholes. Kids are generally open and honest and genuinely curious, and I'm quite happy with "Why do you walk like that?" from them. I'll generally give them an Li5 answer. Cheeky kids I already know get an Elic answer. The hair bit is really interesting. I dye my hair unnatural colors too, and I've had the opposite reaction. Kids are normally really excited to see me. That's really crappy that you get rude questions from adults. I can't imagine thinking someone else's medical equipment or conditions is my business. I am a little person. Let your kids ask questions. I can't speak for everyone, but personally I am happy to explain things to kids. Some of my favorites have been, "Did you not eat vegetables as a kid? My mom says they make you grow big and strong." Same girl saw my 6'6" cousin and gasped, You ate too many of the kids who come up and measure their height against mine. The only adult that has ever made me laugh was a Renfest actor, the Miniature King. My husband got a picture the instant the guy realized he was taller than me, and I was wearing thick-soled shoes. It looked like I made his whole day, just by being 2 inches shorter. He bought our lunch since we took it in stride. Same girl saw my 6'6" cousin and gasped, "You ate too many." That's freaking hilarious. There was an old Reddit confession bear or some crap about a guy in a wheelchair with a disorder that makes his body atrophied and twisted. When kids would ask him, "Why do you look like that? What happened to you?" he'd answer, "I didn't eat my vegetables when I was a kid. Don't care if it's fake. Funny as frick." Also, that famous guy born with no legs and arms would tell kids it's because of smoking. I don't care if the child looks, or even points. And if they ask you about it, answer honestly and in a manner you see fit. But, and maybe I'm a dong for this one, I'd really rather you didn't approach me about it. I'm not a 24/7 teaching moment, and, despite being disabled, I do have crap to be getting on with. Plus I'm not good with kids, you can teach them better than I can. As a parent, I've taught my kid to ask me first, quietly, and we usually talk about it at home. If I have a friend who I know doesn't mind talking about it, that's far different from approaching a stranger. While the shape and contours of my face aren't affected, a good portion of my face is strongly discolored along with that one eye, and a swath of my hair grows wild and discolored also. It's impossible not to stare at me if you see me for the first time. I'm used to it and I just tell those who do that it's okay. Take a good look. Would you like a selfie with the mad scientist at the grocery store? I'm somewhat of a local oddity in my community. You need to go around on Halloween wearing a lab coat and sticking up your hair like Doc Brown. You have the best mad scientist costume of them all. I'm a burn survivor and have pretty extensive burns to most of my body, except my face, but my legs are really noticeable when I'm out in shorts. It was 20 years ago and I feel I see people staring more now than I did previously, but I think I'm more aware as I have a 3-year-old, so I wonder how it might affect him. People looking don't worry me as, especially kids, I think people are just curious. If people approach me I'm always happy to talk about it and say what happened. I'm hesitant sometimes in what to share with kids as the burns were from house fire, so I'd hate to scare them. But I'll answer any questions. If I overheard kids asking their parents about it I'd like it if the parents asked, but I know it's not that easy and usually just smile. Username checks out. Curiosity is an important trait which should not be hampered. As a young man with Scheuermann's kyphosis I encourage questions. My son saw a Sikh guy sat in a hospital waiting room when he was around 5 years old. Not being the shy retiring type, he went and asked him what he'd done to his head under the bandage. I was pretty embarrassed, but Sikh fella was cool AF and found it funny really. Never met a Sikh I didn't like, TBH. Yay. Every Sikh I've met has been very kind and understanding of looks they get. I don't mind when kids ask about the scar I have, but it is important how you ask. I've had my scar for a long time, and when I was a kid it really hurt my feelings when people would ask what's wrong with your arm instead of can I ask what happened. As an adult it doesn't bother me when kids say stuff like that, but as a kid it really hurt. Teach them it's okay to introduce themselves and ask questions, but teach them how to word them in a nice way. I'm pretty ambivalent since kids are all a bunch of buttholes, but the weirdest funniest is when I'm being pushed in a chair and cross paths with a kid in a stroller and they give me a knowing nod. Kind of like Jeep drivers when they pass each other. Kids are great. They look with curiosity, not pity. My wheelchair tends to get a fair amount of attention from kids as I've decked it out with a Wonder Woman costume complete with a cape. And I took the regular joystick cover off and use Funko Pops that I've drilled holes into instead. I tend to encourage kids to have a closer look if they want and brush the parent off when they start apologizing for the kid's curiosity. But the best response I ever saw was when I was browsing the aisles at the supermarket and a mother asked her daughter, 6-ish, to move aside a little for me. Girl, mum, why is that lady in that chair? Mum, well, there could be lots of different reasons, but most likely, her legs don't work as well as mine or yours, and the chair makes it so she can get around easier. Girl, okay, cool. I gave that mother such a big grin. Not only did she not make the assumption that everyone in a wheelchair is paralyzed, I can walk a little but not much, but she explained it to her daughter in such a simple way. THST left the emphasis on the chair being a good thing. THST helps me, not something to be pitied. So my stance is, let them be curious. Answer their questions if you are able. If you can't, ask the person that they are curious of if they can ask questions. Some, like me, are more than happy to answer stuff. Others are not, but there is no harm in asking politely and respectfully. I myself have always been very curious about others and have often asked people if they mind if I could ask a few questions to better understand. Whether it be about a disability, different culture, race, or religion, physical attributes. I feel that understanding goes a very long way in this world, and you get that by have open discussions with people from all walks of life. Either that or I'm just a nosy sucker who wants to learn about everything I can. Curiosity is awesome. I do the same thing. I've found that people are more than happy to share if you ask out of sincere curiosity. I have a noticeable limp and walk with a cane, and sometimes I wear knee braces or a full leg immobilizer. I had a little boy ask if I was a robot once. Very adorable. Look, usually if it's a little kid, it's not a big deal. They're curious. They're still learning about people and their differences. As long as a kid isn't pointing and yelling what's wrong with that lady, it usually isn't an issue. Yes, same. My wife has Neurofibromatosis, NF, a genetic disorder that causes non-cancerous tumors to grow along the nervous system. After researching it, I found that she's one of the lucky ones. Many with the condition grow them in places that severely hamper quality of life, and can even cause death. Her most visible tumors are on her face. She much prefers that children ask her directly, and has no issues answering questions. I have an arm-length, meaty scar. When prompted about it, I always tell kids to be careful around glass. Maybe does not fit there. It is quite funny though. I have diabetes type 1. I use an insulin pump. Last year I traveled to Canada, and I must say Canadians are really nice. Anyway, when I traveled back from Canada to Munich, at the airport a child asked me what that thing in my pants is. I said it is my insulin pump. We went on, talking about diabetes in general, and after 5 more minutes or so, something hit me from behind. Shouting, screaming, some guy is mashing my face into the ground. Out of reflexes I turned around, and in the process broke the guy's arm. I immediately stopped when I saw that it was a security guy from the airport. Turns out, while talking to the little boy, somebody standing next to me overheard the conversation. Hearing insulin bomb instead of insulin pump, and we're going to die instead of without it I am going to die. It was quite a welcome ceremony after spending a month in one of the nicest countries I've been to, coming back to Munich and being categorized as a potential terrorist. Staff did not press charges or anything. I still feel bad for breaking the guy's arm though. 3 months later I hosted a seminar about diabetes and what to do if a diabetic needs assistance. Not your target audience, but as an engineer, if I see someone with a newer prosthetic or wheelchair, I'm going to try and find a way to chat to you. Obviously we'll try and do it without making you uncomfortable. Luckily everyone I have chatted to is okay with talking about it. I had to walk with a walker and leg braces before. I got a lot of looks from strangers, most likely wondering how I ended up that way. A smile from a stranger goes a long ways in cheering up a person that has seen better days. My daughter is a double amputee. She prefers children ask. She will explain why she walks the way she does and why she has something on her leg. She has been known to take her legs off and show people why she needs the legs. She's also a child, but she's very understanding and doesn't mind. Also adding, I am a very curious adult who likes to confirm and learn rather than assume I know. I would be very interested to read how it's preferred, or things to avoid, when asking. For example, I joined a new team recently, and there's a woman in the building who wears a scarf on her head, and doesn't appear to have hair. I can assume chemo, but that's not the only reason someone would not have hair. As someone with neck dystonia, kids usually prompt the question, why do you do that, or doesn't your neck hurt? I've been asked by people of all ages really, but kids are the most curious. Usually adults just give me a really concerned look, as in what a freak. Late to the party, but I was severely burned as a 6-year-old while playing with gasoline and matches. There were 6 of us, none over the age of 8. Most of my scars have faded over the past 50 years, but when I was younger the scars were very pronounced. I can understand the curiosity of a child to speak what's on their mind when they see something out of the ordinary, and when they ask I will be honest and explain to them what occurred. What I have found out about the human race is there are just some mean and ill-educated adults in this world. Also, the ignorance level of educated adults is mind-boggling, but what is worse is a lack of common sense. While growing up I have been called it all from ugly, know the word in 4 different languages, to burn toast. Children and teens can be very creative with words. And yes, I know the scars are very prominent, and yes, I am disfigured. That doesn't excuse one behaving like an total butt when explaining to your child what you think has caused my scars, or to have your child not play with me because of my scars. The scars will not rub off on your child. I can say that over the years I have come across a few children playing with matches and solvents. I explain to them what can happen when you mix open flame with flammable chemicals, as they probably have not been taught about it from their parents. Most listen and can comprehend that if you do play with matches and gasoline you can end up getting burned and end up looking like I do. That is something most children can understand. My daughter has Down syndrome. Young children usually just see a child and don't notice any differences. For the ones that do notice, I'd prefer them to encourage their child to say hi to my daughter, and for the parents to encourage them by saying hello too, or to prompt them to ask me a question, like, doesn't she have pretty hair? 'Cause she has awesome hair. And then often the child will say something like she talks funny. Poor parents get really embarrassed, but that then gives us a chance to talk, so I can explain that even though she may be difficult to understand, that she also uses different methods of communication, and she can talk with her hands, sign, and also her iPad speaking app. And then I explain that my daughter can understand everything they're saying to her, but sometimes she just doesn't like talking at all. But I will then try to find some common ground and also tell or get my daughter to show them some of the amazing things she can do. I find most parents are grateful for the time I give to explain and educate their child. Next time we see them, that child may very well notice us and come up and say hi. On another note, my daughter loves wheelchairs and stares at them, and has zero tact and says look mum look, quite loudly while pointing. I say oh wow, a wheelchair. How cool. Then if the person using the wheelchair looks at me, I explain that my daughter likes them and finds wheelchairs very interesting. Most people say then talk to her and are very accommodating. I would much rather people say hi, smile, wave etc and maybe ask me questions, because there's a lot of misinformation out there and educating is better than getting angry, I feel. Unless it's a child who has been taught by their parents that people with disabilities are inferior, and if they are rude and stare while they're walking, then I may possibly not warn them about the pole they're about to walk into because their heads are twisted around staring. I remember my son being young and staring at wheelchairs. I always explained he likes your wheels and hoped I was saying the right thing. He still likes wheels. Many years later. I have diabetes and sometimes my continuous glucose monitor or the tubing for my insulin pump is showing. I'm not shy about them and don't mind kids asking questions. Sometimes I like to tell them I'm a robot. Technically I kind of am. On a more serious note, it always upsets me when parents get angry with their children. Grabbing your child's arm and angrily telling them it's impolite to point doesn't benefit anyone. Please don't punish your children for their curiosity. Foster it. Maybe encourage some online research or thoughtful discussion about disabilities. Please don't punish your children for their curiosity. Foster it. Maybe encourage some online research or thoughtful discussion about disabilities. This. When I was very young I was in church and saw a man nearby who had missing fingernails. I asked him what happened to his fingers. He said, I talked in church. Oof. Let them ask. I'm not a social pariah. I'm not scared or ashamed of myself. The child being shooed away makes me feel more disrespected because it comes with a feeling of being shunned. There's no reason a child shouldn't talk to me. The only thing that should be addressed is the way in which the child asks. If they asked in a disrespectful way, I'd like parents to correct that. But otherwise, let them ask. But do not stop kids from asking questions. Let their curiosities play out instead of fester. A child doesn't know why I look the way I do. and it doesn't bother them. They just want to know why. When a parent shoos them away, I feel like the parent is intimidated or made nervous by my appearance, which is 10 times worse than anything any child could do say to me. I used to have really bad eczema all up and down my arms. When kids asked about it, I'd always talk to them. I'd let them know it's a skin condition that causes my skin to be all bumpy and dry. I always let them know, don't worry, it's not a contagious disease and it won't hurt you. I've even let kids feel it to show them there's no harm. Kids need to know not to fear people who look different. When you stop them from talking to strangers like that, you give them a reason to fear strange looking people. All they see is this person is different and my mom won't let me talk to them, so they must be a bad person. Next thing you know, anyone with disabilities is bad to them. My dad had a neurological condition where he had bumps all over. When I was like 7, one of my dumbhead classmates said in disgust, "What's wrong with your face, mister?" He was a very tall and burly man and leaned over, whispered, "I got AIDS and I'm gonna spit on you." This was like 1990 or so. The scare was still strong. Little butthole ran away screaming. I really miss my dad. Let them interact. The more time I can get a child to not be scared of my appearance, I feel like I'm changing the future. If I'm with my friend who has autism and has a soft shy voice, or my other friend with CP who uses a walker to get around sometimes and has a bit of a speech impediment, I sometimes get stares. As for me, myself, people would think I'm more of a drug addict than I am autistic, so I'm off the table. It's fine to glance, don't stare. And of course, my friends have told me they are very much open to questions from either kids or adults. My friend with the shy voice is a bit more understandable of the kiddos, considering she's a part-time babysitter and works with kids at a daycare. My sister has Freeman-Sheldon syndrome and says she doesn't mind children staring too much. It's the adults openly staring that is bad because they should know better. Off to Google something new. I have a friend who has a congenital birth defect. He's missing most of his hands and feet and apparently as a child a good chunk of his jaw too. He doesn't mind explaining to kids if they ask, but I've seen him ham it up a treat when parents do some rude things regarding him. You have been visited by the cat doctor. Comment cat health to get good health and do not get sick. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.